evening to where everybody is signing in from, because we've got a great international audience for today's Space Catalyst informational webinar. Thank you for signing in. My name is Jonathan Yakasha with Tech Connect. I will be your host and moderator today, but quite frankly, you didn't sign in to hear me talk. We're going a little bit different this time. In some of our previous webinars, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to sign in for those, we've talked about spaceports and how to fund your commercial space operations. And we've talked about LEO operations. We're going a little bit further out this time. We have Mike Moreno, VP of Strategy from Lunar Outpost. He's here today to talk about, as you might guess, lunar operations. So, folks, if you've got questions for Mike about lunar operations and maybe how to work with Lunar Outpost, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, use the Q&A chat box, pop your questions into there. We're going to take roughly about half of our 45 minutes to get to your questions. So with that, I'm going to say, Mike, talk to us about Lunar Outpost. Who are you guys? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And first of all, Jonathan, let me just say thank you. I love working with you, and I love working with Tech Connect, and really looking forward to having this conversation. So thanks for having us on. We're grateful, and we look forward to continuing work in the future. Lunar Outpost was founded in 2017 to help continue humankind's sustained presence in space. And we are laser focused on mobility. So what does that mean? We put the world's first commercial rover in history on the moon earlier this year in March of 2025. We have several more contracted lunar missions, lunar surface missions going back to the moon, including midpoint through next year. I'm going to talk all about that. And we are a finalist in the competition that will be announced very, very soon in the next few weeks on the Lunar Terrain Vehicle Services contract. That is to say, we won the first phase of that. We have built our full-size drivable prototype of the space truck that I'm happy to talk about. And NASA will be selecting the company that will be building that and putting that on the moon for Artemis astronauts to drive for the next decade. We're leading the design and build of the rover. That's the Australian Space Agency's first lunar rover. And we are launching our demonstration for our mobile autonomous robotic swarm software early next year. So there's a lot going on at Lunar Outpost, but we're a lunar and off-planetary mobility company.
Awesome. All right. So you touched a little bit about this. Your Lunar Voyage 1, rather, earlier this year. I understand you guys had quite a few firsts for that one, including, and I'm just going to give up myself as a Lego fan, the Lego behind you. You guys have a unique partnership with Lego. So talk about some of the firsts from Lunar Voyage 1, please.
Yeah, what I like to say is, in addition to solving really complex technical challenges on a daily basis, we're also creating new business models. And so what that means is on Lunar Voyage 1, and this launched in February and landed in March on the IM-2 mission, it was a sub 20 kilogram exploration class rover. That's our MAP rover, the mobile autonomous prospecting platform. And on that, we had, so it's 100% commercial payloads. It was a profitable mission. It is a new model of doing business on the moon. And we had payload customers that you might expect, like MIT. They had a resource camera to map the lunar surface. We had a neutron spectrometer to look for water. We had a LiDAR sensor for exploration. But we also had some pretty innovative commercial partnerships, like Juventus Football Club. We had their logo on the MAP rover. They are now the first football club on the moon in history. And of course, we had this partnership with Lego, which is right above me. And I happen to have that set has 3 rovers in it, one of which is the model of the MAP rover that went to the moon. So MIT had a payload. That's the Astro-Ant on top of it. And that is a smaller rover that was built to do some thermal sensing on top of our rover and inform us on the health of the system. And so we spent several years working with Lego to design that set that you see above me, that Technic set. We're very happy with the partnership, and it's, for me, a model of what we can do on the surface of the moon, right? It's no longer sort of only meant for, we are of course pushing forward on space exploration for humankind, a sustainable presence, but the lunar economy is much more than I think we've thought about for the last several years, and it's coming a lot faster than people realize.
Okay. One very big topic that I wanted to make sure that we talked about, and I'm going to guess there's probably a fair degree of interest from our attendees. You guys are explicitly looking for payload partners, people who are interested in working with you guys on future missions. What's the process? What's the timeline? What kind of payloads are you guys interested in?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we are a mobility services company, and I'll say on lunar terrain vehicle, that is, again, the full-size space truck. So the MAP rover is, like I said, sub 20 kilograms. If you would like to get mobility on the moon and get on the surface of the moon, talk to us. You can literally go to lunarOutpost.com, and there's a link that you can click and fill out to start the conversation about what you would like to put on one of our MAP rovers. The lunar terrain vehicle is that full-size space truck. It operates crewed and uncrewed autonomously. So NASA will buy standard missions, which means for a percentage of the year, they have that control of that entire vehicle, and we're operating it from our mission control in Golden, Colorado. But we also have a remainder of the year where we can offer that payload space to other government and commercial customers. So we're talking hundreds of kilograms of payload space that we can sell and partner with you to co-develop. It's as straightforward as reaching out to us on the website and starting that conversation. And what I would say too is we are limited only by our creativity in terms of what we can put on the surface of the moon. We have a lot of payload space. We have a contract, with SpaceX Starship to put the LTV on the moon. And once we demonstrated with Lunar Voyage 1 that we could land MAP on the moon, we got a lot of even more interest and have more conversations about what creative things we can do.
Okay. So let's say I'm a company representative and I realize that I want to get my tech onto a lunar payload mission. I go through the form. What's the rough time frame from the time I submit to when theoretically could my stuff actually be on the lunar surface?
We have gone from concept to delivery of a flight vehicle in 18 months, or less, which is pretty quick in the world of space. And we have contracted lunar missions going to the moon on MAP rovers with payload space available. So those have launch dates that we can talk about, once we start that conversation. Or it might be that we have customers reaching out and they want to be an anchor customer, enough so that we create a new mission, a new rover that we develop for the purpose of this mission. And then we go then look for a new launch date that might be a couple years out.
Okay.
So the short answer is it depends, but as we're a pretty agile space company and we move pretty quickly.
Okay. All right. I know that commercial space companies, if they want to get their technology to the International Space Station, they frequently need to work with an integration partner to make sure that they can get their tech onto NASA tech. Is that something that you guys require, or are you effectively the delivery partner and the integration partner?
So you work directly with us to get the payload onto the MAP rover, let's say, if it's a MAP mission. And we, of course, launch with a launch provider. All of our missions are currently on SpaceX Falcon 9s. So we put the rover on a lander. Like I said, for our first mission, Lunar Voyage 1, that was the IM-2 mission, so Intuitive Machines with the lander. For our next mission, Lunar Voyage 2, that will be also an Intuitive Machines lander. And so, we are open to all of the CLPS providers. We can potentially, we have the launch, we have the landing, and then you work with us directly to integrate onto our rover.
Okay. All right. Mentioned that you guys have international offices. Does that mean you guys are open and willing to collaboration with non-US corporate entities?
Yeah, 100%. And I should have said this up front. Our headquarters is in Golden, Colorado. We also have our newest office across the street from Johnson Space Center in Houston, literally right across the street. And we have offices in Luxembourg. We work with the Luxembourg Space Agency and the European Space Agency, and then offices in Melbourne, Australia, to work with Australian Space Agency and other regional agencies. Absolutely, we're open to working with international partners. There are 56 signatories of the Artemis Accords, and we'd love to work with all of them to put their payloads on the surface of the moon. So whether you're a commercial company, internationally that's allied with the U.S. and an Artemis Accord country, or a allied government agency, we'd love to have that conversation.
Okay, all right. And I'm not at all surprised. As soon as we started talking about potential partnerships, the Q&A box, which I've got up on my screen here, just started to light up as more and more questions came in. Folks, if you have submitted your question, we will be getting to them momentarily. Go ahead and keep submitting questions. We will get to as many of them as we can. One of the questions that I had on my list and have seen already submitted on the chat, does it have to be a commercial partner? Could it be an academic researcher who is looking, hey, I want to do some research with lunar data. Can I put my device onto one of your rovers?
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
and I'm really glad you asked that. And 100%, the answer is yes. We have, for example, our second mission, Lunar Voyage 2, which launches next year, is in partnership with JHU APL, Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. That is a science mission going to Reiner Gamma. That's the equatorial region of the moon. Reiner Gamma holds these magnetic anomalies, these magnetic swirls that have puzzled scientists for years. And so we're going to go use a vector magnetometer and take a look and see what's going on there. That's a science mission. We had MIT, like I mentioned, academic research instruments on our Lunar Voyage 1 with that resource camera and with AstroAnt. So absolutely, we have science goals and objectives, and our LTV is a platform that is very capable of meeting science objectives. And so we'd love to have those conversations with research institutions, with universities, about how we can push that mission forward for humankind.
Okay, all right, great. Another question. So obviously, being the LTV developer and lunar rover developer, you guys are kind of into hardware. But since you're doing autonomous operations, software plays a role too. Is that something that you guys are interested in, a virtual payload, so to speak? Hey, I've got this great new software for autonomy.
Yeah, so we are, it's easy to take a look at our website and you see the hardware, you see our Eagle LTV driving around, you see map on the moon, and it's very clear that we're a hardware company. We are also a software company, and we built our Stargate spaceflight command and control software from the ground up to run our space operations and to operate map on the moon. That reached TRL 9 during Lunar Voyage 1 and achieved 99.997% uptime. So very, very happy with Stargate. We also have, like I mentioned, Mars Mobile Autonomous Robotic Swarm software that allows us to control heterogeneous assets autonomously. And that is because, I'm going to get into the vision in a minute because that's relevant to that. But the short answer is, yes, we're a software company. Yes, we're happy to talk about software payloads. That's the same with a hardware payload. That's part of the conversation, and we look at each potential customer or partner on a case-by-case basis. But absolutely, that's possible.
Okay. All right.
And now let me take a step back because I said I was gonna connect that kind of Mars point to a broader vision and something I meant to say earlier, which is because this question will come up eventually. What does the next 5 years look like? What does the next 10 years look like? What is the future of our company on the moon and the Mars and beyond? We want to be operating. We believe that we will be operating the autonomous robotic workforce at scale, and that is hundreds of thousands of rovers on the moon and Mars to build, operate, and maintain infrastructure to support a sustained human presence, to build out the lunar infrastructure. And so when you think about the space truck, the Eagle LTV, that is like akin to a pickup truck that you would see at every construction company on Earth, right? It's a multi-purpose vehicle that operates crewed and uncrewed and autonomously and telerobotically. Imagine hundreds and thousands of those operating with our map rover, and that is the vision. So think about how you can integrate with that mission. And the lunar infrastructure is not, early days, it's launch and landing pads, it's roads, it is energy, it's life support for astronauts. And then we expand, that's kind of like the basics, right? And then we expand to what else do you see in a small village, anywhere in an expeditionary environment or a forward operating base in an expeditionary environment. We're building out the lunar economy, and anyone who sees themselves as part of that should be talking to Lunar Outpost so that we can get you there and give you that mobility.
Okay, all right. All right, folks, I've got like 2 more questions that I'm going to ask before we get to your questions. There are a ton of them. I will apologize in advance. We probably won't get to everybody. That being said, keep asking your questions because, frankly, it's demonstrating that you guys really want to know what Lunar Outpost is up to. Saw in the registration a number of people asking questions about infrastructure for settlements on the moon. That is not something that you guys are directly tied to. You're supporting, but you guys are not actually building infrastructure for settlements on the moon, yeah?
So the vision is, yes, we will play an integral part in the construction of that infrastructure. For example, we have a platform that we call ARAM, Autonomous Robotic Assembly and Manufacturing. And we have a demonstration of that vehicle autonomously building out a solar field. You have the raw materials, you have you have materials there on the surface of the moon, you send ARAM, you give it some commands, build a solar field, and it will then autonomously construct that field. So absolutely, we envision ourselves being part of that construction and then the maintenance. And we think that those habitats, that life support, the infrastructure will be built by robots because humans, astronauts, frankly, have better things to do on the surface of the moon. We don't want them necessarily turning wrenches and building these things with their hands. We want to rely on that autonomous workforce.
Okay, all right. Obviously, you guys are interested in autonomous operations on the moon. Autonomous operations are kind of interest down here as well. Is that something that you guys are looking at? Hey, can we take our technology developed for lunar operations and repurpose it for Earth operations? Is that something that you guys are exploring as well?
Yeah, 100%. We already have platforms operating here on the surface. We work very well in resource-constrained, bandwidth-limited environments, GPS-denied, DDIL, as some governments call it. And if you think about the standards that we set for our space missions, for example, Lunar Terrain Vehicle is a NASA Class A mission, which means human-rated, working with astronauts. So it needs to meet Class A mission requirements, things like operates on the surface of the moon for 10 years with no maintenance. Our autonomy stack needs to survive and thrive in the very harsh environment of the moon. 500-degree temperature swings, regolith that is, that gets everywhere and is electrostatically charged, and that needs to be managed very actively. And when you take all of that and turn it to the surface of the Earth, they are very capable systems. Think mining. Think anywhere where you wouldn't want to send a human being, our robotic systems can serve that function.
Okay. All right, folks, it's your time now. I'm going to start reading off some of the questions that you guys have submitted. So, Mike, you're on the hot seat here for the next 25 minutes, asking questions that I have really have not seen before just now. So, speaking of LTV, what is the payload capacity, both mass and volume of the LTV? Is that something that you can address right now?
Yeah, okay, so great question. I'm glad you asked. We are still competitive for a few more weeks. NASA will announce the at least one winner of that phase 2 of the LTVS contract. Targeted date is mid-November. And so because we're competitive, I'm not going to give you all the numbers, but I will say that the NASA requirement is 800 kilograms of payload capability on that vehicle.
Okay. All right. Let's see. You talked about the harsh lunar environment. To the extent that you can you talk about how your rovers LTV can survive lunar night?
Okay. Yes, I can. What I will say is active and passive thermal management. The lunar night is very challenging. It's 14 Earth days here on Earth, but on the moon, it's lunar night is 14 Earth days. So General Motors builds our battery. We have a very capable EV battery in terms of energy storage. We have that's charged by solar panels that are deployable out of our lunar training vehicle. And if you go to our website, you can see images of that and video of that driving around. So it is good thermal management, good energy management to survive the lunar night. And beyond that, I can't share too many details, but we are very confident in our ability to exceed the NASA expectations or requirements. And since I mentioned General Motors, I should also give a plug for all the rest of our partners. Our lunar training vehicle is part of we call it the Lunar Dawn team. So Lunar Outpost is the prime contractor on that. And General Motors does like I said, the suspension and the EV battery. And then we have MDA Space, which does our robotic arm, the Skymaker that's on the back of our LTV. And that allows us to manipulate payloads, scoop resources, lunar regolith. We have Leidos, which supports us on human safety factors, safety mission assurance, assembly integration and test. They put about 97% of the cargo onto the International Space Station. So tons of space heritage. And then Goodyear, which made tires for the original Apollo missions and makes our wire mesh alloy tires for the LTV. And so when you think about the really extreme lunar environment and all of the things, including the surviving the lunar night, this is heritage from the companies that we mentioned, and then Lunar Outpost's space heritage and expertise that we bring together to solve those really complex challenges. And it is hundreds of years of heritage and spaceflight heritage. MDA Space, for example, has more experience operating robotics in space alongside astronauts than pretty much any other company that I know of. And so we leverage their Skymaker to operate on LTV because of that heritage.
Okay. Two follow-up questions before I get to the next attendee question. One, you mentioned your website. There was a question that was submitted. What is the Lunar Outpost website?
www.lunoroutpost.com. And you should follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn and X because we have some really cool social media, some great videos. We've had, we try to educate as well as inspire. And so you can find a lot of great material on all of those socials, and we are very active on posting.
All right. The next question I've got, having been somebody who was fortunate enough to see the LTV in person, I gotta tell you, it's just pretty cool. Is there any public viewing of the LTV right now? And if so, where?
I will say we just finished, so Eagle is the LTV. We just finished our summer road show, we called it, where we took it on the road. We were at the Tech Connect Summit in National Harbor, Maryland in late August. We put it on the steps of Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The week after that, we were at the State Fair of Texas in Dallas alongside General Motors. We then took it for about 10 days and displayed it at the Kennedy Space Center in the Gateway exhibit, if anyone's familiar with Kennedy Space Center. We took it directly to Space Center Houston, next to Johnson Space Center, and put it on display there for 2 days. And then to finish it all off, we were at the Talladega Superspeedway at a NASCAR race just last week. Having said all that, and for those keeping track, that's about 31 days on the road. We don't have anything on the calendar right now for a public display of the Eagle LTV, but I am certain that we will in the future. So stay tuned, follow those socials, and we'll let you know.
All right.
Because you're right, Jonathan. It is pretty impressive to see it in person. It's a whole different thing.
Oh, it really was. It really was to walk in and just see. Calling it a truck is descriptive and apt, but it's a whole other category.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question.
And let me just say, it looks great. It's also very capable. You know, it is form and function. We've done extensive testing, human factors with astronauts, current and former, in the vehicle, giving us their real-time feedback and iterating on it. We've had multiple full-size drivable prototypes. And so what you see today is the result of all of that feedback to make this it is an astronaut-centric design meant to, focus on safety and space and lunar surface exploration capabilities. It also looks pretty cool. So, checks those boxes.
It really does. Great that you mentioned operations and safety. The next question we've got, are there restrictions on the types of payloads that you can integrate into your rovers?
I feel like, so for sure the answer is yes. What are they? Size, weight, and power? If you're asking that question, you probably understand the general restraints within which we work in space. What I would say is we have modular payload space. We're meeting and exceeding that NASA requirement of 800 kilograms of capacity. And if you are interested in pushing the boundaries of that, and you want to talk, then reach out and let's have that conversation.
Okay. This has come up a couple of times in questions. What about biological projects? Is that something that you guys are interested in, or is it more in lunar operations, lunar hardware, rather than actual biotech stuff?
Absolutely. We have a mission coming up in the near future called ELIF, and that is a project in partnership with the Australian Space Agency to put plants on the moon and to experiment with growing plants on the surface of the moon. And so we are certainly open to that, and would love to have that conversation as well, and to push the boundaries.
Okay. Let's take a look at some of the other questions we've got in here. Bear with me, folks. You have listened, and you've submitted quite a few questions. So I'm just looking through the questions that we have right here. Okay, this one is a little particular, but I think it is still potentially relevant. Since LTV has the capability to support astronaut operations, does it have onboard water storage for astronaut usage?
We have the capability to support onboard water storage, certainly. We have cold storage, we have tool compartments. So it is, like I said, that there's that modular payload space, there are fixed payloads, and there is cold storage. So we certainly have the capability to store water on board.
Okay.
And I should say too, the LTV is an unpressurized rover. And so if you're visualizing it, if you haven't already been to our website while we're doing this, go now and you're immediately going to be rewarded with some pretty cool video. You'll see that it's unpressurized. So that means it is built for astronauts in pressurized spacesuits containing their life support that a pressurized suit will contain. And so pressurized rover is much larger. That's something else that's being built with, as part of Artemis with JAXA, and that will, I think, contain separate payloads outside of our scope, but we are an unpressurized rover.
Okay. Talked about the fact that Lunar Outpost is looking for payloads to send. Could somebody propose new equipment for LTV?
That's a good question. As part of the payload space, absolutely. If you want to test new equipment, we have gone through preliminary design review on LTV. We have selected our partners and our vendors in building the architecture. So in terms of like major architectural changes to the vehicle, that's not something that we're looking for right now, but we're always looking for partners, and we have, we're expanding the boundaries of surface mobility missions in general. So if the question is sort of that angle, then reach out and let's talk. But we're unlikely to significantly change the architecture of LTV at this point. We are interested in adding payloads to the vehicle.
And I've got to imagine that right now things are kind of fixed as the review process proceeds, but maybe for an LTV Mark II somewhere down the road, that incorporating that new equipment might be a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And LTV is a multi-billion-dollar, decade-plus services contract with NASA. We do not see ourselves as limited to only LTV as a platform. We have our MAP rovers that we're continuing. We envision other platforms that we will build in the future. And so, like I said, this vision of the autonomous robotic workforce on the surface of the moon can incorporate a lot of different platforms. So we're always building.
All right. We've talked about success of Lunar Voyage 1, talked about the fact that you guys are looking for collaboration partners. That generates, I'm going to guess, quite a bit of data. Are there publicly available results of are there publicly available data sets that researchers could take a look at, or is that really just the domain of the collaboration partner?
We have not made any data from our missions publicly available beyond what we put on our website. So we have a wrap up of Lunar Voyage 1 and the data that we collected. And I should say a general overview of the data that we collected. If you're looking for things like, NASA makes its data publicly available at a certain point for space missions. We are a privately held commercial space company, so that's not our default to make data publicly available. But we certainly that's part of the partnership discussion if we're working with a payload customer or partner to share that data.
Okay. Talking about LTV capabilities, this may be a little too far into the weeds here, but is LTV able to drop off something on the lunar surface and then go off on its merry way and do other
100%.
stuff and pick it up later?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it gives me the chance to sort of dive a little bit deeper on this. So yes is the answer. Astronauts will be able to drive LTV at great range. The whole purpose of mobility, why mobility is important on the surface of the moon, is because where we land is not necessarily where we want to be working. From a very practical perspective of launch and landing is not someplace you want to hang out for very long. When we get reusable launch and landing on the surface of the moon, there is plume, there is regolith, there is risk, and so we want to extend our range and get beyond kilometers away from landing. And when we build out those human habitats, that's where they're going to be. They're not going to be right by the launch and landing. And so the vision for this infrastructure class on the terrain vehicle is the ability to take cargo, move it autonomously, drop it off, and then go on with the mission. So absolutely, we can drop off payloads, we can pick them up. Again, modular system, and that's kind of the whole point, is to give us that capability and that flexibility as we expand and settle on the moon.
Okay, great. You talked a little bit about LTV being an open cabin, and an astronaut on LTV is relying on their suit to protect them. So this next question goes down that pathway. Would you be interested in, or would you guys consider for future LTV upgrades, instrumentation and hardware that helps protect the astronauts, mentally, physically, protect them from cosmic radiation? Is that something that is on your radar for longer term development?
So am I interested in astronaut safety? Absolutely. Everything that we do starts with that, and it's something that we think about every single day at Lunar Outpost. We've designed the architecture around astronaut safety being the most important thing to us. In terms of how we do that, the technology, or you mentioned sort of mental health, human factors in general is a major focus for us. So enhancing that, look, we've built in a lot of margin. We built in a lot of redundancy into the system for the sake and purpose of keeping the astronauts safe. And if there are ways that we can increase that safety margin, we're absolutely always looking for that.
Okay, great. This next question, a lot of attendees for these kinds of programs are commercial space startups. They're looking to get their tech off world, but they don't necessarily always have the financial resources to do that. If somebody were to contact you and say, hey, we'd like to partner with you on a payload, are you guys able to help that proposing company get in touch with additional funding to help them make their mission dreams a reality?
So what I would recommend is, like I said, we are a privately held commercial space company. We're not ourselves investing in other space companies. We do always keep our eyes out for creative partnerships. Having said that, if I'm talking to a space founder, and I've worked, prior life, as you know, with hundreds of space startup founders, this is an industry that requires smart investors, smart venture capital, patient capital. And the good news is there are a lot of those out there right now. There are a lot of great programs. There are a lot of great accelerator programs, Tech Connect. Obvious plug for you guys, and the accelerators that you run and the programs that you have. That's where I would go looking, into the venture capitalists out there that understand this world. Start those conversations early. Look for the non-dilutive government funding that's out there. NASA has SBIR and SITR programs, DoD funding. Space is. We talk about our contracts with NASA. We also have a DoD StratFi. That's non-dilutive funding to develop our Mars product. And so there are a lot of options out there. And where you are as a space startup, it kind of, that's going to determine how you move ahead in this conversation. When you have something that you want to put on the surface of the moon, come to us. We are a commercial company, so there is a cost involved to that.
Okay. Based on the conversation we've had for the past 40-ish minutes here, the takeaway that I've got is that from a Lunar Outpost perspective, you guys have relatively broad interests in who you would like to partner with. You have relatively open goals when it comes to the kinds of science that could be accomplished, be it computer science, hardware science, what have you. Safe to say that you would rather somebody reach out and say, this is what we're doing, this is why we'd like to work with you, rather than self-select out and not submit a response. Yeah?
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough that this is the time to be creative. If I can tell you that we have space on a mobile platform, on the space truck, on the surface of the moon, like I said, the sky's the limit on how creative you can be on what we can do there. So I will just again point to our first customers on Lunar Voyage 1. It's Nokia testing their 4G LTE cell phone network. It is Juventus Football Club with hundreds of millions of followers on their social media and a theme for that season of space. It is Lego that wants to inspire generations and make space fun for kids and adults alike. We're partnering with Castrol. They're a partner on our mission control center, and they put obviously they have space grade lubricants on robotic platforms. That's just Lunar Voyage 1. And we would partner with we had a crypto wallet on the outside of our map rover that whoever gets there first can be able to enter and unlock like $250,000 of cryptocurrency and NFTs. So get creative and let's talk, because if we're going to have hundreds and thousands of kilograms of payload space, there are a lot of very exciting things we can do.
Okay, all right. Actually, that brings one final question. What we haven't mentioned is sample return. Most of the stuff is, with the exception of data, is a one-way trip, at least for right now.
Map is staying where it is for now. Sample return, lunar sample return is in the future, but it's not something we are talking about right now. We are totally focused right now on giving that mobility on the surface of the moon and building out that lunar infrastructure.
All right. So future astronauts, you can pick up your crypto wallet in a couple of years. All right, folks.
And I mean, there's so much opportunity for that, for the in situ resource utilization, using that water ice that we find in the permanently shadowed regions of the moon for rocket fuel, for water and oxygen for astronauts. Certainly those critical minerals and materials are present in the lunar regolith that we can use on the surface of the moon. But there's no doubt that the future roadmap includes bringing those things back to Earth. Helium-3, for example, we can unlock unlimited free energy. We need to bring that back to Earth and commercialize that. And what I would say is, this audience probably gets it, what I say always to a broader audience is, it's sooner than you think. This is not 20 or 30 or 40 years from now. It is not science fiction. It's actually today. And we have several missions on the way to the moon. So this is the conversation that's happening right now.
All right. Folks, we are just about at the end of our time today. So first off, to our attendees, thank you all very much for signing in and asking a ton of great questions. As I said previously, I didn't think we were going to get to all of them, and unfortunately we did not. We just simply ran out of time. Mike, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Folks, I'm going to be really disappointed if Mike doesn't report back that the Lunar Outpost team saw a surge of potential payload partners reaching out to them, because from the questions that you all were asking, got a lot of really good ideas that I think Lunar Outpost might be interested in talking to you about. So get out there, check out their website, submit your payload possibilities for them, and hopefully in a couple of years we'll be talking to you about what your payload did on Lunar Outpost mission 17 or whatever number it ends up being. Thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate it. Hope to see you again on another Space Catalyst community webinar. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, Jonathan. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.